So the first one that I'm going to start with was directed towards Micha, but happy to get both Rochelle and Nicola's ideas on it. And we were asked if there were any theories or ideas for explaining why the islands and exclosures in WA aren't as successful as the ones the data sort of shows the ones in the eastern states have been.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I guess, well, if I was smart, I would say I'm not super familiar with every data set in there, so I don't know. If I was smart, that's what I would say. But I'm actually going to have a guess at it, because what I suspect, although I'd have to look at it more carefully so this is a relatively uninformed answer. But what I suspect is that across some of the other regions where the national figures come from, the populations were actually doing worse to begin with. And so if the population is doing worse, then even a small increase as a percentage looks very big, because it's all an index. It's all about relative to the base year, what was the change. So my suspicion, and I can see Rochelle nodding, hopefully I might, I'd love to hear if Nicola and Rochelle think this might be a reasonable explanation. But I would suspect that some of the other populations from outside of WA might have been doing really, really poorly. And so relatively small increases come up with big numbers. But also I think it's just worth keeping in mind that for the WA data set in particular, it's from quite a small number of data sets, so it's not a really big sample yet. Hopefully we'll have more data sets in future. But if you also look, if you saw the spread of the WA ones, I mean, some of the increases were twice as much as that 116. So I think there's only 8 taxa in there. So even if one of them did a little bit less bad, it will pull the average down. So yeah, I think those are 2 plausible explanations, but I don't know if Rochelle and Nicola have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's right. And I think both of those things that you touched on speaks to the numbers game that we're dealing with as well. Any change in a small pool is going to look like a big change. And yeah, I think that the baseline where the WA was starting from was probably in a bit of a better position relative to some of the other subject cases. And so, yeah, again, it's against that baseline. So.
But I think the take home is, I mean, it's very consistent across the 2 that there's a strong signal that mammals are doing much, much better in these places relative to the other populations with less or no management. So I think that signal's consistent.
Exactly. And with the theme of what was found with that mammal index, that some management has a really good impact and lots of management has an amazing impact. So I think a lot of the time we can feel apathy and like nothing can be done, but actually the index demonstrates really nicely that there is lots that can be done, and even if we do some of it, we get good results, which then reinforces further investment in management.
Well, Nicola, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the conversation?
I think I actually have a bit of a question for Micha. So, because I know there's a few projects that I'm aware of in WA that you didn't include in your index, and I guess you might have touched on this in your presentation, but does the length of data set, is that one of your sort of selection criteria for inclusion? So I think that there's probably going to be a few projects that will get included after a few years, and you'll start to see big improvements coming out of those.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I know we already have quite a few more mammal projects that will be included in the index that comes out later this year. So that was very much a first stab at mammals. So there's definitely more coming in. But also, I probably should have mentioned, like, the index from 2019 only goes up to 2016. So we have to kind of cut off a couple of years before. So yeah, that could be part of it as well. So essentially, you needed to have more than 2 years of data up to and including 2016. So there's quite a lot of other projects, as you say, that will be coming online with data in the next couple of years. And that's one reason why we never wanted to do this as sort of a standalone thing, because both, you know, the quality of the data that we have gathered, as well as, a lot of new projects coming online will get reflected as we go. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And Nicola, we've got a couple of questions for you. One was about the movement of the wallabies and whether or not it might be related to the sex of the animal.
It definitely could be. That's not something I haven't looked at formally yet. And with only a sample size of 5 individuals, we had 3 males and 2 females collared. It's not really a big enough sample size to definitively say males move further than females. We'd need to have a lot more animals covered to say. But your general speculation would be that males do travel a bit more. But yeah, it's not something I've had a chance to look into too much detail, and I would be hesitant to draw strong conclusions from only 5 individuals.
Okay. And the other question was, were there any suggestions as to why the population is declining, sort of despite the management actions of that AWC's implementing at the sanctuaries?
So we've kind of always thought that it's due to predation. So despite doing a lot of feral animal control, we do have cats and foxes on the property. I'm sort of wondering now if it's a little bit to do with resource availability over summer, because there's no water sources at the outcrops where the rock wallabies are, and over summer it gets very dry and we lose a lot of grass and things. So my current thinking is that the rock wallabies are quite restricted. We know from other populations they won't move away from their outcrops, even if they're starving, if there's like a landscape of fear, like predators and things around. And so I'm wondering if it's a combination of, having predators so they're not moving away from the outcrops to access resources, and then resource depletion over summer. That's why I'm quite keen to look at if their behaviour changed from going from winter into summer and doing the project over summer to see what they're doing and what the food resources are over then. So I think it's, I suspect there's a bit of an interaction between resource availability and predation, but that's where we're trying to get to.
Cool. Rochelle, given the work that you guys have been doing, is there anything that you wanted to add to that conversation?
Definitely resource availability is a limiting factor. That's what we found with one of our wheat belt sites that was impacted by fire over summer. Our partners out there did actually have to go out and do supplementary feeding for the species in that site because there was just no food left for them in those outcrop areas. So Nicola's bang on that there seems to be something around resource availability. And when you have isolated populations that are sort of adjacent to agricultural landscapes, there's not a lot of scope for dispersal to greener pastures, so to speak.
And I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. So I've got one more formal question that has come in. So Micha, the question is, when is the threatened species plant index coming out? Oh, sorry, you're still on mute.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So we finished the data gathering for the first plant index, and so we expect we go through a process where we do a lot of consultation with the people who've submitted data to kind of help with that checking process, help to make sure that we've sort of interpreted and ingested their data correctly and things like that. So there's a process of that over the next few months, and we expect that the index will be available publicly before the end of the year. I suspect towards the end of the year, probably November, December, if everything goes well. So stay tuned. And if you want to know about that, we're on Twitter, so we'll put it up there. But also, if you send us an email, I can add you to the Friends of the Index list, and that's the type of thing that we send out updates about major things like new releases.
Excellent. Oh, we might even get you back to do a presentation on the floral one. And so we've got a question here for all three of you, and it's really to do about citizen science. And, there's so many programs now that are relying on the community and what we see and our participation. And we're just wondering, the sorts of things that need to be taken into account in terms of consistent monitoring and repeatable collection of results. And in particular, things like the Great Cocky Count here in WA that BirdLife runs. Was there were there any comments that you wanted to make just in regard to those sorts of programs? I'll start with Micha.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we're seeing a lot of fantastic citizen science efforts. We're starting to see studies showing us that the reliability of things like, monitoring data and identification of species are often not, statistically different between trained professionals and some of the results that we get from citizen science projects. So I think there's very much a growing awareness of the value of citizen science efforts. But I think one of the problems with monitoring data, and this doesn't in any way apply only to citizen science projects, is that in general, Australia has very good coverage of data spatially and very poor coverage of data temporally compared with other countries and other places. And one of the reasons for that is sort of a lack of a data standard around time series, and sometimes not capturing that metadata that's really critical in order to be able to include data as time series. So, I mean, that does apply equally to citizen science and other projects, but I think with citizen science in particular, what we're going to try and do over the next few years, and hopefully we've started with this project, is starting to converge towards an understanding of the minimum metadata standards that are needed in order to use monitoring efforts in time series and get the most out of them. Yeah.
Rochelle or Nicola, did you have anything you wanted to add about the citizen science and engagement?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a topic that's quite close to my heart, as Micha knows, and I think that the important thing to note is that not all citizen science is created equal, and that there are different projects that will be able to achieve different things. And so from the most ad hoc, incidental, opportunistic, which can be really great for things that occur in very low densities, and when you're engaging the public, it's difficult to keep them engaged and interested if they're going out time after time doing structured surveys looking for something that occurs at such low densities and they get fatigue and give up. But definitely there's a spectrum, and I think getting people on the gradient, on the spectrum to begin with is the first thing. And then molding them and massaging them in that journey to go from the incidental, opportunistic through to, and a citizen scientist that is basically giving us professionals a run for our money in terms of rigor and using structured methodological approaches. So it is a complex space, and it's all too often simplified and put in one basket, I think, and it really needs to come back to being fit for purpose, just with any other scientific approach.
Nicola, did you want to add anything, or?
No, I don't think I have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we'll end off the formal questions and answers now. We've had a couple of queries about donations to the different organisations. So when we send out the information, we'll get some links from Rochelle and Nicola, and we'll be able to send out some information in case people wanted to make donations to any of the programs that you're running.
And Ingrid, can I just say, I can see someone's asked about walking at Purina, and our walk trails are reopening this weekend. So if they go on our website, they can get the information for that. But they've been closed for a while, but they're reopening this weekend.
Oh, thank you. I had missed that one. So I wanted to thank all of you again for participating today. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be making these presentations available, and particularly to celebrate and highlight Threatened Species Day on the 7th of September and Biodiversity Month, which is next week as well. We will make the link available to everyone that participated and registered today, along with the Mentimeter questions, so people can go in and have a look at those. And we'll go in and look at some of the feedback around potential future topics as well and take them into consideration. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been great to bring the diversity of people back together again after sort of the interruptions of COVID. And thank you to our three presenters. It's been really interesting information, and I think it's given us all a lot to think about. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you may be.
Thank you.
Thank you.